Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings and movings and shakings and all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming and technology. Hope you're all doing well out there, and you will be no doubt be pleased to see that I have ditched that awful Elgato face cam that I was experimenting with last time, back to using my main YouTube camera again, the good old Sony ZV-E10 with the Sigma 16mm lens that I love so much. So, yeah, hopefully things are looking a little bit better. I am using, just for anyone who's interested in the kind of technical side of things, I am using the USB streaming option from the camera now rather than the Elgato Camlink thing that I was using before. So maybe that's improved things. I'm not quite sure. I always had all sorts of problems with that, with it stuttering and audio delays and stuff like that. But anyway, maybe you can let me know down in the comments about that. But I'm sure you're not here for me waffling on about the technical side of how I actually make these rambles. You're probably here for the stories, aren't you? So let's just dive straight into one. And big story today, which has been posted by MNemo or Menemo. I've never been sure how to pronounce that, so maybe let me know. Over on my Discord server, I have a specific channel over there for Ramble submissions, and yeah, it's quite a big one. So this is to do with the Command & Conquer series. Of course, that classic real-time strategy series from EA way back in the day. And this is a link to a news story on gamingonlinux.com. So the headline here is that EA has just open sourced Command & Conquer, Red Alert, Renegade, and Generals. That's right, they are open source, and this is an actual proper open source license. It's the GPL version 3. I can't believe it. So I can't quite believe it either. It says here at the beginning of this story, written by Liam Dorr, Command & Conquer Red Alert, Command & Conquer Renegade, and Command & Conquer Generals, including 0 Hour, of course the expansion for Generals, have had their code officially open sourced. This is how it should be done. When a game is old enough, open source it so the community can keep it alive and learn from and perhaps even improve them. Looking over them, they're all under the GPL3 license. However, there are some additional terms added, like EA not granting any trademark or publicity rights. You don't get the rights to use Command & Conquer or any other trademark, for example, which, to be fair, I think is perfectly fair enough. And they've done more than just open sourcing their older titles. So they've also enabled Steam Workshop support for Command & Conquer Renegade, Generals and 0 Hour, Tiberian Wars and Kane's Wrath, Red Alert 3, An Uprising, and Tiberian Twilight. That's Command & Conquer 4, of course. So we have Steam Workshop support for those as well. So we can have all those wonderful mods and add-ons and things officially via Steam, which is great to see. And they have launched a new video going over some rare gameplay footage from the early development of Command & Conquer Renegade and Command & Conquer Generals, which, to be fair, are two games that I'm not particularly interested in. I like the old, the old classics, but nice to see. If you want to go and check out that video, of course, this news story on gamingonlinux.com will be linked down in the description and indeed in the show notes if you're listening to this on one of the various podcast platforms out there. So you can go and give that a watch. But of course, the big news here is the open sourcing. So if we go and check out their GitHub, which is where they have actually released this code, 20 hours ago, they have made this public, and it says this repository includes source code for Command & Conquer Red Alert, which is the option that I've picked because it's probably my favourite in the series, to be fair. This release provides support to the Steam Workshop for the game. So we have some dependencies here, as you might expect. The DirectX 5 SDK, which, of course, is an indication of the game's age. The Direct Media 5.1 SDK. We've got the Greenleaf Communications Library, so you have to track that down somehow. And the Human Machine Interface Sound Operating System, SOS. And we even have compilation instructions here under Windows. So you need Whatcom C or C++, and Borland Turbo Assembler. Version 4, so proper old school here. And it says here, to use the compiled binaries, you must own the game. And they do have some links here to purchase it as well on the EA app and on Steam as well, which is very nice of EA. As far as contributions are concerned, of course, this isn't kind of properly fully open source, accepting pull requests, that kind of thing. This repository will not be accepting contributions. If you wish to create changes to the source code and encourage collaboration, please create a fork of the repository under your GitHub user/organization space. So even actively encouraging people to take the source code and make their own modifications and stuff. And of course, this leads to like modern preservation efforts, making these games available on different platforms and on kind of modern operating systems as well. So I expect to see some of that off the back of this, as well as people just kind of poking around in the code and, seeing how it was all put together. Some early discussion, some very early discussion that I've seen online, people looking at the code and saying that it's quite kind of old school and quite archaic, which, to be fair, is probably something you would expect of a game from the kind of early to mid 90s. So I think that's quite reasonable. And there we go. So yeah, EA have open sourced a load of games in the Command and Conquer series, one of my favourite series of all time. Excellent RTS games, and hopefully this is going to lead to a bit of a revival for these games. Like I say, maybe some kind of modern remakes and implementations of these. Always good to see, and as mentioned on gamingonlinux.com, more of this, please. You know, these old games that are no longer kind of commercially available, why not do this? Why not let the community pick up the support for them? Quite a surprising move from EA, I have to say. If you're a regular listener or indeed viewer of these rambles, you'll no doubt be familiar with the Sony series of consoles known as the PlayStation, starting with the original PlayStation way back in 1994, of course working their way up through the PS1, the PS2, and all the way up to the PS5, of course, the latest iteration, still going strong today, one of the biggest gaming franchises in the world. Is it a franchise? Platforms, maybe. We'll stick with that. Let's roll with it. But there is a Sony console that I wasn't familiar with until this story was posted over on my Discord server by regular contributor Gravitone. So thank you ever so much, Gravitone, for posting this. And this is the Sony PocketStation. Now, I described this as a console, but it isn't really. And of course, we'll talk about that a bit in a second. But this is a link to a Blue Sky post by Brandon Sheffield. And it says, "Alert! PocketStation development kit available on itch.io. The PocketStation's time has finally come." And then there is a link here to Orion Soft's itch.io page. Now, it turns out that this isn't actually a brand new release. It's kind of a re-release, but I thought I'd take a bit of time just to kind of learn a bit about the PocketStation because I knew absolutely nothing about it. And I'm going to take you on that journey as well. So let's go and check out Gunnar Wikipedia. And apparently the PocketStation was released in 1999, and it's not really a standalone console in its own right. It's an add-on for the original PlayStation, and it's very much in the vein of Sega's VMU, you know, the visual memory units that came with the Dreamcast console, one of my favourite consoles of all time. And as we can see here, this was first released in 1999, just quite a short time after the Dreamcast was announced. So I guess Sony perhaps taking a little bit of inspiration there, although I'm sure Sega probably didn't invent the concept anyway. But yeah, it's a very similar thing. So it's a small little handheld thing with buttons on the front and a little LCD screen. You can plug it into the PlayStation and it will work as a memory card, but you can also download little games and things onto it as well. So yeah, it was released in Japan in 1999. The device acted not only as a memory card, but was interactive itself via a small monochrome LCD display and buttons on its case. Many PlayStation games included software that could be downloaded and played on the PocketStation. A release in Europe and North America was planned, but ultimately cancelled. And the PocketStation shares similarities with Sega's VMU for the Dreamcast. Yes, of course. So I've got the whole story here. Not really much kind of a complicated story, to be honest. It was very short-lived and, of course, only sold in Japan, but quite interesting. And apparently it was massively popular in Japan as well and is actually quite well supported by PlayStation games. So a bit of a mystery as to why they didn't release it in the rest of the world. It's got a little ARM CPU. It's got 2 kilobytes of SRAM and 120 kilobytes of flash RAM, which of course is via the PlayStation memory card. It's got a 32 by 32 resolution monochrome LCD. It's got a little miniature speaker which supports 10-bit PCM sound. It's got 5 input buttons, 1 reset button, infrared communication, which is bidirectional, and it takes a 2032 lithium battery. It has a built-in calendar function, and yeah, quite a cool little thing and not something that I'd come across before. I think maybe I'd heard the name PocketStation, but perhaps not not quite thoroughly investigated that. But of course, back to the actual story itself, this PocketStation dev kit is now available. So you can actually develop your own software for the Sony PocketStation if you are so inclined. And this is on orionsoft.itch.io, which of course will be linked in the usual places. The PocketStation dev kit is a C library and a set of tools that makes it easy to create games and demos for the cute PocketStation console from Sony. And you need basically an ARM GCC compiler, it says here. So dev kit ARM is apparently recommended. And the library supports pixel drawing, sprite drawing with clipping and transparency, keypad processing, text drawing functions, a random number generator, a sound player up to 8 kilohertz, and IRQ user callback. And the tools provided are an ASCII text conversion, tool so for Japanese text, essentially. Sorry, tripping over my words there, as always. We've got a raw binary conversion tool, we've got a bitmap image conversion tool, and we have a TIM image conversion tool as well. And all of the tools are have their complete source code as well, so you can modify them and compile them yourself on your chosen platform of choice. So very, very cool. We've also got an example here on how to use the library. And this was released 7 days ago at the time of recording. It costs $15, which is quite reasonable, I think, for a little open source effort. And it says here that, there are instructions here to compile this on Windows 11 using Cygwin as well. And as mentioned before, there is someone in here in the comments just thanking them for re-releasing this, because apparently this was available for a short time back in sort of 2024, and it is now permanently available as a thing on the itch.io page. But just quite interesting to learn a little bit more about the Sony PocketStation. And if you are interested in developing some little games to run on that little 32 by 32 LCD screen with those little buttons and that little beeper, then there is now an SDK available for you. So, of course, linked in the usual places. Interesting stuff. So the next story is something that I've seen pop up on a few different podcasts now, actually. In fact, it's from a couple of weeks ago, but I thought I would weigh in with my thoughts as well, because I quite like this. This is quite a nice story, and it's very much in my ballpark as well. So something I have thoughts on, and that's all that's required to be featured in these rambles. And this is a story from The Guardian, British newspaper, The Guardian. And it's about retro consoles and their apparent increase in popularity in recent times. So the headline here is "There's no stress. Gamers go offline in retro console revival. Trend to fix or buy consoles such as Game Gear or Nintendo 64s may reflect a desire for internet-free fun." And this is basically kind of based around an interview with Luke Malpass from Retro6, who, of course, provide console modding parts and, well, modding and repair, I guess, parts and accessories and services and all the stuff around that. Very much a good egg in the retro gaming community, and one who is deservedly getting quite a lot of very positive attention off the back of this. Now, the story basically talks about all sorts of people, but particularly younger people getting into these older consoles, these older retro consoles, because, of course, modern gaming is all about these permanent online requirements, and it is something I have talked about in these rambles in the past. You know, companies releasing games, and you play it for a year or 18 months or whatever, and then they take the servers offline, and that's it. The game's just gone forever. And you've got permanent, a constant stream of updates and things, and, permanent kind of online requirements for things nowadays, because, well, commercial reasons, I guess, wanted to tie people into platforms, not necessarily being done in the best interests of the gamers themselves. And a bit of a recurring thought that I have about modern technology as well, I have to say. But people discovering these old consoles, of course, you buy yourself it says here Nintendo 64 or a Game Gear as the two examples, so I guess we'll roll with those. You slap the cartridge in it, you switch it on, and you're off and away playing the game instantly. No waiting for updates, no patches, no nothing like that. And you can buy and sell the games, and you fully own them outright, and it's a nice place to be. I mean, I'm sure I don't need to convince my viewers and listeners of that. But the story talks about Luke here, repairing these consoles and selling the bits and pieces for them. Some nice pictures here of him doing his thing, working on a console. What is that? I think that is actually an N64, isn't it? Yeah, I've taken one of those apart. It says, what started as a passion project for Malpass, restoring consoles to their former glory, quickly evolved into a full-time business. At its peak during lockdown, his company Retro6 employed 16 people to cope with demand, and he puts this down in part to people being stuck at home, of course. People were bored, finding things at home and searching for things online. We originally were just selling on eBay. We didn't even have a site, and eBay were limiting our sales because they thought it was fraudulent, he says. It literally took over. I've had that problem trying to sell on eBay in the past as well, I must say. And they get so they still get hundreds of requests each month from people hoping to get their consoles fully working and playable or upgraded. And this has stabilized, apparently. So a nice steady stream of business for him. And this is the interesting part. There's a whole variety of people who are into this now. The older than me generation, so sort of late 40s, early 50s, who tend to be PC-based with Amigas and Commodores. Then my age, so people in their 30s who are very much into Game Boys, Mega Drives, Super Nintendo Entertainment Systems, things like that. And then there's a younger generation that are either into the Nintendo DS, things they played with that are starting to become retro, or they're just really obsessed with retro as a whole. So you do get people in their 20s that are more obsessed than we are, even though they didn't grow up with it, which is really cool to see. I must say this story has brought a little smile to my face. So he has a large following on social media, 61,700 subscribers on his YouTube channel, and 44,100 followers on TikTok. And it says here that the young people who engage online say they're reaching for retro games because of the distinctive gameplay and for the chance to switch off. You know, no constant stream of notifications and messages and friend requests and all of that stuff. You turn your console on, at the top, you're gaming. There's no stress, there's no internet, you're not competing against the world, you've got yourself in a game, you feel a sense of achievement as you're going, and that was originally what you used to do. And I think sorry, I'm still reading from this interview here, by the way. I think younger generations have got a lot more stress now. Growing up in the social media world is very mentally challenging. Retro video gaming is their safe place. It's like their escape. And then there's a little story here about one of his customers, Matthew Dolan, who is a software developer in his 40s, very relatable, has brought along parts for his Game Gear console to get that repaired. Of course, those Game Gears have issues with the screens in particular, and I think the audio dying on them, needing to replace some of the capacitors and stuff. And I guess that's another benefit of these older consoles as well, the fact that they are very easy to work on and to repair. Of course, something that I have done quite a lot on my channel myself over the years. And then it talks a little bit about kind of buying and selling, stuff like that, how much some of these things cost. And then there's a list of popular retro consoles at the bottom. So we have the Game Boy. I'm not going to read the descriptions of these. They are just kind of very basic, surface level descriptions of what these consoles are, and I'm sure you are familiar with them. So we've got the Game Boy. Yep, totally agreed with that. Channels like the Retro Future, Elliot Cole, he does a fantastic job kind of fixing Game Boys and covering all of that kind of stuff. And he is a younger person, I think it's fair to say. I'm not quite sure how old he is. I think he's, sort of late 20s, something like that. Very popular with the younger crowd. The Game Boy, the SNES, the original Xbox, which I must say is a console that I'm starting to get back into as well. One of my absolute favourites back in the day, and lots of cool stuff to discover from that kind of very early kind of time of online gaming and stuff. The Amiga, which, again, the Amiga scene is very big. I've seen a couple of other podcasts where they've covered this, and they've kind of debated the position of the Amiga on this list and whether it's kind of a suitable nomination. But I wasn't an Amiga owner back in the day, as you probably know, but I have had a lot of dealings with that community, and I've been part of Amiga shows and stuff, and there is a really big community around that system, and quite a good one to get into if you want to get into kind of the 16-bit era of home computing and stuff, and kind of investigate that. And the final one that they mention here is the Game Gear, which I do think is a bit of an odd choice. I've always considered the Game Gear to be a bit of an oddball as far as the kind of retro consoles are concerned. Whereas the Game Boy had its own kind of very distinctive style with that LCD screen and had its own games. Obviously, the Game Gear was pretty much just a portable version of the Master System. I'm going to get in trouble for saying stuff like this, but there you go. And it might be easier just to buy a Master System maybe, but still a cool console and one that's very worth checking out. And with modern screen upgrades and things, you can actually get half-decent battery life out of them nowadays as well, which was always the problem with those kind of colour handhelds back in the day. The Atari Lynx as well, of course, another personal favourite of mine. But, interesting to see kind of a whole kind of broad spectrum of people getting into these retro gaming consoles, and very much the simplicity. The games, of course, the gameplay still holds up today. We've got these modern kind of indie games and stuff which are using a lot of kind of the same kind of gameplay and kind of graphics from some of these older games. So I'm sure that's creating a lot of interest in the older stuff and the inspirations for those games. And just nice to see. It's always nice to see more people getting into the hobby. I've never been one to gatekeep, and everyone is welcome. So really great story here from The Guardian. Nice interview here with Luke. Well worth checking out. Now, dear gamer, allow me to take you back to a simpler time, a fun time, an in-person, cooperative, collaborative, in front of the TV with your friends gaming time called the early 2000s, and a time that I very fondly remember doing just that, crowded around the TV with my friends, and in this specific instance, Holding plastic instruments. You remember the whole era of plastic instrument games, rhythm games, Rock Band, Guitar Hero, all of that stuff. A huge fan of those games and had some very, very happy memories of playing those back in the day. And it seems they're back. In fact, it seems they never actually went away, which is quite interesting. So this is a story over on timeextension.com, and this is a brand new guitar controller for these games. So the headline here is this new Gibson controller will work with some of your old PS3 Guitar Hero and Rock Band games. And this is a story by Jack Yarwood. And it says here, the American guitar manufacturer Gibson and the peripheral developer CRKD are teaming up to create a new set of controllers based on the design of the iconic Gibson Les Paul. Of course, made famous by such guitarists as Slash and lots of others. Manic Street Preachers guy, what's his name? Quite a few. My mind's gone blank. I must admit I've always been more of a Strat guy, but there we go. The controller seems to be primarily made to work with Epic Games and Harmonix's 2023 rhythm title, Fortnite Festival. Now, before we go on with this story, I just want to talk a little bit about Fortnite Festival because I wasn't familiar with this until I read this story. And it seems in 2023, of course, hopefully you're familiar with the concept of Fortnite at least. It's not a game that I've played, but it's one of these kind of online battle royale games that's popular with the kids. And in 2023, they made a rhythm game add-on for this. So we've got a page here. It's got a picture of some hip young music star. I think that's Bruno Mars, is it? I don't know who these people are. But it says here it's add-on content DLC for Fortnite. So two players locally or 4 online. And it was released in the Switch eShop in December 2023. So the description here says, play in a band with friends or perform solo on stage with hit music by your favourite artists in Fortnite Festival. On the main stage, play a featured rotation of jam tracks. Compete against friends for the best performance or team up to climb the leaderboards. Explore the festival jam stage to find friends and mix hit music together using the jam tracks in your locker. The festival is just beginning with more jam tracks, music icons, concerts and stages coming soon. Take your stage in Fortnite Festival. And I had no idea that there was a rhythm game built into Fortnite, or at least available as DLC for Fortnite. So there you go. I guess anything's possible. I thought that genre was long dead, and, that's not a good thing. But anyway, back to the main story. It's compatible with Fortnite Festival, but is also stated to be functional with a bunch of other titles too, including Clone Hero and YARG, which I believe are modern kind of implementations of the classic Rock Band or Guitar Hero form that's, allow people to submit their own songs and stuff. Rock Band 4 and a collection of other much older Guitar Hero and Rock Band games for the PS3. More on that in a second. Via a built-in legacy mode. And it says here for PlayStation consoles. I'm not quite sure why they're hammering the point home about PlayStation here, but so the list of games is quite comprehensive. Got Guitar Hero 3, World Tour, Aerosmith, Metallica, Guitar Hero Smash Hits, Guitar Hero 5, Band Hero, Guitar Hero Van Halen, Warriors of Rock, Rock Band 1, 2 and 3, Beatles Rock Band, Green Day Rock Band, Lego Rock Band and Rock Band Blitz. Lots of happy memories playing Beatles Rock Band specifically. I had a friend who collected these plastic instruments, and he had the violin bass, that Paul McCartney plays. He actually had that. It was quite a nice thing actually, quite a well-made thing. And the guitar controller comes in 4 different variations, which are based around 2 designs, the Encore and the Pro Edition. The Encore Edition comes in a black tribal colour scheme and features a mechanical strum button and standard fret buttons, while the Pro Edition instead comes with a blueberry burst design, and it's quite a pretty looking thing, I must say, and switches out some parts for mechanical fret buttons and a Hall effect strum bar with haptic feedback. How times have changed, eh? And it says here, despite all of the insistence on the PlayStation stuff at the beginning of the article, they're available in a multi-platform version that's said to be compatible with PC and PC handhelds, Switch, Android, PS3, PS4, and PS5, in addition to another version specifically designed to work with the Xbox Series X and S, the Xbox One, Android, and PC. And it should be highlighted that the Xbox versions won't work with any of the PlayStation devices, which of course was very much the case back in the day as well. So we have some listings for these for sale. So we've got the Tribal Edition here, $119 or £119, €139. They're all kind of in that ballpark. You'll pay an extra $10 or €10 or whatever for the Blueberry Burst Pro Edition. And for some reason, the Xbox version is more expensive than the PlayStation version. But there you go. So there we go. That is a new collaboration between Gibson, the guitar manufacturer, and CRKD, making these brand new official rhythm game controllers. Supports all of these fantastic old games in the Guitar Hero and the Rock Band series, some of my favourite games of all time, and also works with Fortnite, which apparently has a built-in rhythm game as well nowadays. And that was all news to me, but very cool to see. And that brings us around quite nicely to my regular video of the week feature, wherein I feature a video that I've seen in the previous week here on YouTube, a video that has inspired or entertained or educated or otherwise improved my life in some way. They're quite often retro related, quite often not, but it's always something that I've watched and found interesting. And this one definitely ticks all the right boxes. So this is a channel that I have a bit of history with. I did interview Sean over on my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese, quite a while ago, and I do chat to him as well. He's a thoroughly nice chap. We've supported each other's efforts for quite a long time now, and he's one of those channels that I watch religiously. And this is a very cool piece of software, not one that he's been involved in the development of, but one that he has done a very capable job of showcasing on his channel in this very video. Now, this is Spotify XP, which is a Spotify client for Windows XP, as you might expect. So Spotify, of course, big music streaming platform, really big part of my life as well. I have it constantly running on my phone in the car, for example, if you're listening to music or listening to podcasts and stuff. When I'm working, I have it playing music in the background. Pretty much always have Spotify open all day, every day, just listening to stuff, because I'm a big music fan and I'm a big podcast fan. And all right, I appreciate there are politics around it and, paying artists properly and stuff like that. But as far as legit music streaming services go, it's probably the easiest one to get into. And it's the one, I've been on board pretty much since the early days. So hopefully I don't have to justify that. But anyway, of course, we are talking about the video and about Spotify XP specifically. So, of course, he talks a bit about the project and shows it up and running on an actual vintage Pentium 2 Windows XP machine. And you can see some of the features here, just going through and kind of searching and playing music and stuff. And there is a link to the project on GitHub as well, of course, down in the description there. So, yeah, this is, as it says, Spotify XP, a real Spotify player for Windows XP. And we've got screenshots of it. I developed Spotify XP for my old daily driver that runs Windows XP. My daily driver is now a MacBook Pro 2022. So there you go. And it says here, on December 2022, Spotify shut down its last version for XP, making this application the only way to listen to Spotify. And we've got the system requirements here, which are processor, anything that can handle SNES emulation, 512 meg of RAM, storage without cache is 70 megabytes, storage with cache is 700 megabytes. And the minimum OS is Windows 98 if you are running the kernel extension on there, which allows it to run some Windows XP stuff. So yeah, minimum RAM, 256 megabytes. That is quite impressive, isn't it? Considering the huge bloated Electron app that is Spotify as it stands at the moment. So really cool project there, and of course a really interesting video. If you don't have access to a vintage machine yourself to be able to get this set up, you can watch Sean's video and get the full experience there. And of course that will be linked down in the usual places, along with everything else that I have covered in this ramble. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about some recent releases on my own channel. Now, if you're a regular listener to these rambles, or indeed a regular viewer of this, or my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese, you will no doubt have noticed that my output has been a little bit inconsistent recently. And there are some quite important kind of personal reasons for that I won't get into here. Some quite big changes going on in my life, unfortunately, at the moment. Longer term, I'm going to keep up with this YouTube thing. This is a big commitment that I have made for this year, but it has been quite disruptive. And of course, there are some things in life that are more important than YouTube. So I hope you understand that. And it's not really something that I kind of want to talk about. So if you could respect that, I would very much appreciate it. But I have managed to get some videos out on my main channel, kind of keeping things ticking over, working on projects and stuff like that. And the first one is this one, which was released 13 days ago. And this video has done very, very well. This has done exceptionally well. In fact, it is now, I think it's the third most popular video of all time on my channel, 105,000 views. And this is to do with the history or the development of Windows 95. So, of course, Microsoft's big operating system from 1995. And what I do in this video is go through some of these Chicago releases. So when Windows 95 was under development, they used the codename Chicago for the project. And basically in this video, I cover the story behind the project and how it kind of came to be, how it's kind of a combination of a few different internal projects at Microsoft, talk about the launch of 95, and then go through and explore some big milestones, because a lot of these releases of Chicago while it was under development were actually leaked to BBSs and things at the time, and you could actually go and download them and install them on your own PC. And, Microsoft added stuff. I mean, just at this particular moment in the video, just talking about the serial number system that they added to try to prevent that, but of course that was hacked very quickly, and the leaked releases continued to flow. Although it was the biggest beta testing program that Microsoft had run to date, with I think over 400,000 testers being involved. So, yeah, plenty of copies floating around. And it's just really interesting to see how they kind of started off with a very kind of Windows 3.1 looking interface, and worked their way up, of course, to the final release to manufacturing. And some of the steps that they took along the way, things that they tried out, and little kind of tweaks, and seeing how things evolved. I find that kind of thing really interesting. And it seems that this has really resonated with people as well. Lots of views on this and lots of really good feedback on this. So thank you ever so much for that. And of course, if you haven't watched it, you can now go and watch it. And then after that, I released another video, believe it or not. I know, videos on a YouTube channel, who would have thought? But this one is just having a look at some modern-ish games on the 17-year-old Mac Pro that I covered recently on the channel. So I did a video where I kind of tore it down and cleaned it out and had a look at what was inside it. And then I did a second one, I was running Exodus on it, wasn't I? Playing all those old DOS games and things on a completely inappropriate old Mac. And in this video, I thought, you know what? I've put a fairly decent GPU in this thing. Let's see what kind of modern-ish, 2019, 2020, 2022 games, even a game from last year I attempted. You can see how well they run on this machine. And actually, I was very pleasantly surprised, because you have to bear in mind the age of this thing. I mean, it was, 2008, and it's got those insanely powerful dual Xeon CPUs. Of course, it's an 8-core machine. It's got 20 gig of RAM. The spec is ridiculous, but just goes to show that you don't need a modern PC for modern PC gaming. That's how things have really slowed down in the past 20 years, I think, certainly compared to the rate of development in the 90s. Which is very much something that I would like to kind of explore in a future video on the channel, I think. But yeah, that is the other video for you. 9,300 views on that in a week, so much more typical performance for my channel. But yeah, just a nice little playthrough, checking out some games. So we've got Untitled Goose Game here is the one that's currently on screen. And, a few others. A good selection, first-person shooters, racing games, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that is also available on Control-Alt-Reese if you want to go and check that one out. But that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. So thank you ever so much for joining me. Of course, these Rambles are available as usual on YouTube and indeed all of the podcast platforms. I upload them to Spotify and then they get pushed out to Apple, what's it called? iTunes, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Google. Google Podcasts isn't a thing anymore, is it? I can't remember. Anyway, that's all I've got for you for this Ramble. That's the point, and I am waffling now. So I will thank you ever so much for joining me, and I will hopefully see you again in the same time and the same place next week. Bye.